Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Real Wealth Network's weekly webinar. This is Ben Eric Smith. I'm the Investor Relations Director and the occasional IC, although lately I've been 90% of my time has been an investment counselor. Been very, very busy around these parts. A lot of people are calling us, doing their thing, which is a great way to start 2019. Anyway, so there we are, and you can see in the background a nice little picture of a plant growing out of money. All right, so before we get to what we're going to be talking about today, I kind of want to just preview our upcoming live event that's happening February 9th and 10th. Gee, it's like exactly a week from today, a week and about a day. Literally next weekend, we're going to be doing our income property showcase and property tour in Tampa, St. Pete. So before we get started talking about lending and all the different ramifications of Fannie and Freddie financing and what you can and can't do and shouldn't do, which is actually really fascinating. I mean, it really is, because Graham has a lot of cool things to say, and we're going to be talking about all that. Just want to make sure everybody is well aware of the upcoming property showcase. So normally, if you're on the West Coast, we do an event every month, just about. And it's usually 3 to 4 hours long. It happens on a Saturday in Northern California and a Sunday in Southern Cal. And we bring out a couple affiliates, and we have maybe a syndication, and maybe we'll have an educational topic. Well, not this weekend. What's happening this weekend coming up is an all-day event, and literally every affiliate we have, with one or two exceptions, I think there's going to be 13 different affiliates going to be presenting. They're going to get and when I say affiliate, I mean the markets. Like we'll have Houston, we'll have Jacksonville, we'll have Tampa, we'll have Chicago, we'll have Indianapolis, did I say Chicago? Cincinnati, Cleveland. I mean, the list just goes on. Each one of them gets 20, 25 minutes to talk about their market, why they like it, and go into some properties that they have available. And then boom, we go to the next one. So it's a real good kind of crash course if you're not really sure where to start and where to begin. And gee, all these markets seem similar. Well, they're really not. There's some similarities. Anyway, if you can register for that, please register at realwealthnetwork.com/live events. See it at the bottom of your screen there. And then that's all day Saturday the 9th. And then on Sunday the 10th, we're doing a tour of Tampa. Our Tampa affiliate is the host of this event because we're having it in their city. And so we've got a bus, and I shouldn't promote this too heavily because last time I heard there was only 3 slots left. But go to the tour if you can. And then in March, we don't actually have the date set exactly, but we're going to do back to our normal procedure. Income Property Showcase in San Mateo up north and Los Angeles down south. All righty, strategies mentioned here may not be appropriate for everyone. Now this is a little bit different because we're talking about financing, but keep in mind that everyone's circumstance is different. Some options may not work for you. You should talk to your CPA, tax advisor, and or attorney, talk about your specific situation. Now this doesn't apply because past performance, we're not going to be talking about past performance. I'm sure Graham will talk about rates and where they're going to go. But overall, just speaking about real estate purchases, obviously they're subject to investment risks, including the possible loss of amounts invested. While every effort is made to maintain accurate and current information, the possibility of errors and or updates always exists. Trust but verify. And there's me. I'm an investment counselor. I've been the director of investor relations for quite a few years here at Real Wealth. Active real estate investor for, it's probably like 29 years now. I used to live out west. I've lived in California, Arizona. I moved to Florida about 3 years ago. And so anyway, I used to do the rehabbing of tons of properties, well, tons, 20 in both California and Arizona. Did fix and flips for a few years, bought at auctions. That was really fun until the party kind of dried up and the music stopped. Couldn't do that anymore. So now I've kind of shifted priorities over to the east. Don't really do the fix and flip, but I do the buy and hold, and I love it. It's a really fun way to spend one's time. Alrighty, so now I'm gonna turn it over to Graham. There he is, standing in the back. Nope, there you are, down in front, right, Graham?
That's me sitting very low. Yes.
Okay, cool. Graham is with Highlands Residential Mortgage, and you've been doing this for 20 years. You've written a book, which I have. I actually financed two loans for you. Yeah, 2 properties a while ago, and that went very smooth. So what I like best about Graham is he's a straight shooter. He's not beholden to a particular bank, having to tout their particular weirdness. He's free to go to a variety of different sources. So without me going on and on, why don't you just take it away, Graham?
Thanks, Ben. I appreciate it. Yes, I've been doing a loan officer gig for over 20 years. Woke up one day, next thing you know, all I'm doing is investors, and as much as I try to run away from it, I've only just eventually embraced it, and here I am today. And I really enjoy working with investors because it's a little different than working with first-time buyers, because they're all professionals, credit's good, their asset base is good, and they're focused. Okay, they're talking about their assets, they're focused on numbers, versus your first-time home buyers, where the wife says, I really don't like the purple carpet and the yellow ceiling and so forth and so on. These guys are focused on the asset and what they can do as far as their profit and loss. I doing so many loans, I kept seeing all these tax returns come across my desk about 15 years ago, and this one guy that's probably got close to 400 properties, I started looking at going, what does this guy know that I don't? And I said, nothing. He's just doing it. And so I really enjoy working with first-time investors, trying to help them strategically plan their portfolio accordingly, because they have the same plan that I do. I mean, I'm constantly looking for properties. I'm currently buying properties anywhere I can. All the properties that I own currently are all within the Real Wealth Network. I think all the managers and everybody is great. I mean, I can't begin to promote Real Wealth Network and all their affiliates to the nth degree. It's been great. It's been a wonderful ride, and want to continue to do so until I fulfill my financial goals. So that's what where I come from. So when you're talking to me, you're going to get not only a loan officer hat, but you'll also get an investor hat, and I can only share you with my comments and my experiences and kind of take it from there. By the way, that was my team. We have a team of 8 members that support our activities. Obviously, it's my show, but everybody has their lane, and they do a wonderful job. One of the best teams I've ever had. We ended up closing last year 423 loans, as you can see here, and we're looking to do that same kind of production this year, but certainly could not do it without us. And one of the things that I will say is having your own underwriter speaks volumes. And if anybody's listening here that's a loan officer, they can only appreciate that, because I know what they can expect and how they're going to underwrite, and there's no surprises. And I think we close on time, and we don't close ugly, simply because we understand the nature of the beast. This is my geographical area that I cover currently. I cover all the Real Wealth Network markets, I believe, except for Pennsylvania. The first thing people ask me is, okay, I want to get 20 loans on my belt. How do I do that? Can I afford it? Well, let's take a look at it. What we do when we underwrite a loan, different from like a commercial lender, we underwrite the individual. We take a look at your credit. We take a look at how much money you make, and then we take a look at how much money you have. And it's all math from there. We do take the appraisal into account. We want to make sure it's a habitable property. It does come in at value. And then we do take the income that is supported from the property itself. So as an example here, let's say you're buying one property right off the bat. You're sticking your toe in the water. Can I afford to buy this? Okay. We take a look at your earnings, and your earnings may not be as high as we'd like for it to see, but it's enough to approve the loan, because once we run the math, we come up with a thing called a ratio. And then there's a terminology in the lending world called the front end ratio and the back end ratio. And the back end is usually the most important. A lot of lenders will stop at 43, 45. We'll actually take it up to 50. But let's say we ran your initial math, and you came in with a back end ratio of 40%, or let's just say take it up to 45. Okay. Then all of a sudden, here comes the new property and the liability associated to that new property for the loan. We add that to your liabilities. We do the math again. Well, then that shoots your ratios above that 50% mark ratio that we are comfortable with, so you can't qualify for the loan. Well, the good thing is it's an income property. It's not like you're buying a primary residence or a second. It's an income property. Well, the property itself is going to support that liability, because it's going to kick off income. If you're buying a property that has a tenant in it, and let's just say you're buying a $100,000 property, you're getting the 1% rule, you're getting $1,000 rent. Your principal, interest, tax, and insurance is coming in, say $650. I'm going to give you 75% of that $1,000 of income. So right then and there, we've offset the liability, but we're actually had another $100. Okay. What we do, I'm just going to look here. We also give credit on additional rental properties that you purchase. That is correct if they're all leased. So let's take a look if you're doing, say, 2 properties. One is leased and the other's not. Okay. The one we're doing the financing on is not leased. Okay. If you skip to that next bullet there, we will actually give you the same credit on that income, which is supported from the appraisal report. It's called the average market rent. And I'd say 99% of the time, the affiliate will lease that property for the almost exact same dollar amount that's on that average market rent, because they want to make sure they can, rent it out quickly. But we're still going to give you 75%, even if the tenant's not in it, because the income is supported on the appraisal. So we can do it. A lot of lenders won't do that. Okay. Typically, let's see here, the true offer, we talked about that. Once again, I've always said if you can afford one, you can afford 10. It's true because they all pay each other. They all have income. They all support your DTI, so it's all a win-win. Funds to close. This is very, very important. When we look at your credit earnings and assets, the assets is the funds available to close for down payment, closing costs, and even reserves that we'll talk about here in a minute. The down payment and closing costs have to be supported through liquid funds, checking, savings, money market, anything that you can show us that's non-deferred an account, that it is accessible, that you can bring to the table. And we do that by you supplying us whatever account statements that shows your name on it and the balance on the statement supporting the number that you need to do the transaction. A lot of times, let's just take, say, a kid that just graduated college, bought his new house, got his new BMW, and then dad says, you need to start investing, son. Okay, well, here's $100,000, son, go invest. Well, the father just gave him, the investor, soon-to-be investor, the son, $100,000. But that's considered a gift. If you look at the bottom of the page, gift funds are not allowed. So if something, a big, large deposit's coming in that's on the last 2 months statements, we're going to have to source that income, or those dollars and cents. Let's say you sold a car, you sold a bunch of stock, or you sold something that you can legitimize and back it up with paperwork. All good. If you can't back it up with paperwork and dad gave you a gift, well, then you better let those funds season for at least 60 days, which means 2 months bank statements. Go ahead, Ben.
I was going to say, yeah, moral of the story is just have dad give you the gift at least 60 days out, or it's actually more like whatever the date your bank statement closes on, so that you can show 2 complete closing month cycles of your bank statement where that money was already there.
Right, which does not show any of those large deposits.
Right.
Business funds, this has kind of been an on and off over the years, but let's say that you went out and set up an LLC for your property holdings. You decided to put $100,000 into an LLC account, at one of the big banks. You show us the bank statements. The bank statement has the name of your business, LLC or whatever it's called, but you can show proof that you have ownership in that business, and that's fine. We'll take those funds, but we have to have some kind of a letter from the CPA stating that if you take those funds from the business to do a personal loan, then it won't have any negative impact on the business. Then we'll allow for those funds, okay? Because when we do a loan, we're doing it in an individual name, not the LLC, which we'll talk about here in a minute. So keep that in mind. If you have other funds in other areas in your business, you may have just a regular type business that's been supporting you for years, and you want to take some of the funds out of the business, same thing applies. Go to your CPA and get that CPA letter to write it. Now, keep in mind, a lot of CPAs, for some reason, they just don't like to write those letters because it causes havoc, and sometimes they just, they just don't want the liability. So keep that in mind. Which kind of goes hand in hand with the non-liquid funds that we're going to talk about here in a second. Let's say you've got a bunch of stock laying around, whatever company it may be, and you want to exercise those stocks. Okay, that's fine. We'll take them. Once you exercise it, show us the paperwork. Show us that whatever the strike price is, whatever the sell price was, whatever those dollars and cents were provided to you that you put in the liquid account, checking, savings, whatever, to show us proof that you actually have the dollars and cents ready to go. We can do the non-liquid funds all day as long as we show the paperwork doing that. Now, the next item here is the HELOC, which is called the Home Equity Line of Credit. I particularly like this one. As an example, I just closed on my primary residence less than 4 weeks ago. The previous home that I had a HELOC against it, and I utilized it for my real estate transactions. So I sold the house, so my whatever loan I had against the house went away, as well as my HELOC. So I'm now in the process of re-upping a new HELOC on my new property because I love HELOCs. It's a great tool, and I exercise it quite often. If for whatever reason something comes on the market and it's an all cash deal, the provider says I'm not doing anything but cash. If I want to write a check against my HELOC for whatever the sales price is, boom, and then I can come back and refinance it later. Or let's say a property came out quick, we got to close quick, and I can't get the funds out of wherever I'll need them from. I'll just strike a check from my HELOC, and you can use that for your down payment and closing costs, but you cannot use it for reserves, which we'll talk about in a minute. So I highly recommend anybody out there that is thinking about getting a HELOC on their primary residence, go ahead and get one. Not to say you have to use it, but if it's always there for your use, because they set it up like your own personal checking account. And whatever you write against that HELOC for the down payment, then you just send us over the new account statement showing the new payment, and that's what we count against you on the liability side. But the good thing is most HELOCs are typically interest only, and they're usually provided with prime plus something. And when I was shopping around for my HELOC, because my company doesn't support a second lien, we're only a first lien company, I saw that the margins on these anywhere from like 0.25 over 2 points, which is crazy. Your credit union is one of your best bets to look for a HELOC. So I highly encourage you to do that on your primary residence. I would love to say that you can get HELOCs on your current investment properties, but I don't know of any institution out there doing it. If you know of it, please let me know. Gift funds that we talked about.
Hey, Graham, I do have one quick question before you move on to Fannie Mae. You know that was about 3 slides back. It was like, hey, if you can get one, you can get 10. Yeah, there we go. Wait, one forward. The one with the yeah, there we go. So I get this question a lot of times, and I never know how to answer. So I'm just going to ask it to you. Okay, yes. So since each rental property that an investor is going to invest in kind of helps their situation a little, because like hypothetically, let's say they buy a house in Cleveland and it's going to give them, after all expenses, $300 of positive cash flow a month. Well, 3 times 12 is 36. That's $3,600 of additional income per year. And if you can count 75% of that, then that's $2,700 of additional income to that person. So in a marginal way, each house that they own helps their situation because it increases the income, correct?
Correct. And if it doesn't help, then you're not buying correctly.
Right, exactly.
Because you're buying for positive income, and that's where you're going to benefit from it.
Exactly. So here's the question, though, from part of that. Yes, it helps the income to the tune of $2,700 a year, using my example, but it also increases the debt because you've now got, I don't know, $60,000, $70,000 of additional debt. So doesn't it kind of wreak havoc with your debt to income ratio, or do they kind of even out in the end?
Well, as I was explaining the scenario earlier, you're always going to be ahead if you're buying right. And I'll repeat that again. Let's say they're all $100,000 properties. Okay, you buy them at $100,000. Your rent is coming in at $1,000. And not having my calculator in front of me, that we calculate your principal, interest, tax, and insurance, which is the liability that you're referring to, is typically we'll run around say $600 to $650. Your 75% of that $1,000, we're giving that to you back, which is $750 a head. We've offset the liability, and we still got $100 left for additional positive income. So they all talk to each other with the income, and they're all going to support each other. So once you buy one, it supports that. You buy another one, so forth and so on. And we even do them in 2- and 3-pack deals at a time, which all support itself. So a lot of people say, I shall do one. Let me wait a little bit and do another one. Or can you do 5 at one time? Yeah, as long as we are all leased up, we're good to go.
Perfect. Okay, thank you for that clarification.
There we go. Yeah. And this is a lot of questions that I get hit up with a lot of, what kind of reserves do I need? The reserve requirements have changed over the last, say, year and a half or so. It used to be, like 6 months on the subject and then 2 months on each individual property that you own beyond that. They recently changed, like I say, about a year and a half ago. I'm not sure when. But what it is they take the aggregate amount of your unpaid mortgages that you have collectively, and that total number is given a percentage. So if you own a property, 1 to 4 finance properties, say you own 3, or let's say 2, and both of them are $50,000 a piece, you have an aggregate unpaid balance of $100,000. So 2% of that, of course, is $2,000. That's what you need for reserves. Same example when you get for the 5 to 10 finance properties. Let's say it's $100,000 again. 4% of that is $4,000. So forth and so on, all the way up to the 7 through 10 at 6%. Now, the good thing about this is if people go, well, I just don't have those reserves in my checking account. Well, do you have an IRA? Do you have a 401k? Do you have something non-liquid that shows you have some assets? We'll use that all day as reserves. And people go, oh, that's great. I'm glad you told me that. A lot of people still don't know that you can use non-liquid funds for reserves. In the old guidelines, we would only support like 60% of that asset. Now we're supporting up to 100% of that asset, whatever the balance may be.
So real quick, can I ask one quick question?
Yes,
I'm sorry, I don't want to slow you down here. Go back one real quick. Okay. That's not a progressive thing. In other words, if I have 8 finance properties, it's 6% of the aggregate unpaid balance from $1. It's not like 2% up to 4%, 4% of
no, that's a good question. I've never had that question asked. No, it's a total. Whatever those 8 loans add up to, then it's 6% against that total number.
Got it. Starting from the beginning. Okay, great. Thank you.
Now, 1031 exchanges, this has been something that's really been hot for the last almost 3 years now. I mean, we were blowing and going up to the 08 bust, and then, of course, the wheels came off, and people couldn't sell their properties anymore, or the upside down, or whatever the case may be, and all of a sudden the appreciation came back into gear pretty much all over the country, and especially on the coast. A lot of people have been taking advantage of their additional equities, not only in their primary residence, doing HELOCs and so forth, but also selling their investment properties. I mean, because I can't begin to tell you how many times I talk to people in California, well, I really can't make any money in California on this rental property, but I can sell it tomorrow for $500,000, and I've only got $100,000 balance, but it's not cash flowing. Oh my gosh, sell it immediately, get with Ben, take it to whatever markets, and you'll triple your money or even more, because the 1031 exchange is there for you and your benefit. I personally did 3 last year. I sold 8 and bought 9 and graduated all my properties, in my opinions, upward, and they're all doing very, very well. But it's an entitlement to you as an investor, and hopefully, the taxation laws will never change in accordance to this. But one of the first things I ask when I'm in a group in front of people, or even talking to them on the phone, hey, I'm doing an exchange. How is the property titled? Okay. And this is where people make the mistake so many times over, is that, well, I went ahead and set it up in an LLC. It's in an LLC. Well, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac does not allow us to fund a loan inside of any type of entity, whether it be an LLC, S Corp, limited partnership, anything other than your individual name or a family living trust that's revocable. Okay. But the laws are very specific. Your exchanger, or should I not say exchanger, your intermediary, which they love to being referred to as is they're very strict on how they make sure that those monies go from like as in whatever name to the new property like as. So if it's in the LLC and they want the monies to go into an LLC, I cannot provide you with the loan. So a lot of times when that happens, people will take the property itself and take it out of the LLC as far as entitlement and put it in their individual names prior to closing, so they can in turn make use of the Fannie Mae system to allow them to fund the loan in their individual name. And we'll talk about the LLCs in just a minute, but that's one of the more critical mistakes. And I worked for several venues, just say since 2008, because the loan companies these days are still trying to figure out, do we really want to be in this game of lending game? There's too many compliances, so forth and so on. And there's a lot of originators that have actually had to move because of that. But some of the venues that I was at, it's interesting. I have to train the underwriters. The underwriters that are not familiar with underwriting investment property loans or even dealing with 1031 exchanges, they feel as if they have to be an arbitrator or control the exchange. And let me explain what that means. And I had this happen all too often. Let's say somebody has $100,000 in their exchange and they want to buy 3 properties. And I get a contract on 2, and they're going to use 60 grand for down payment, closing cost on the 2. Well, you got 40,000 still left in the till. Well, so we're going to close, getting underwritten, and the underwriter will see the 1031 exchange account showing the 100,000. They'll look at the cash to close on the 2 properties that we're funding, and they'll say, well, there's $40,000 left. Some underwriters will say, well, what are you going to do with that 40,000? Well, it's none of their business. It's your money. And our underwriters think that way, where a lot of lenders don't. And I've had that called out many times. It's not their business. They just, because when you look at some of the underwriting guidelines that even Fannie posts, it's almost like as if they cut and pasted from the IRS guides, and the interpretation of the underwriter sometimes can skew it negatively. So we don't do that, just to make sure. That once again, I told you about the exchange funds. They cannot be used for reserves, and we talked about that earlier. You can use your other type of liquid funds or non-liquid funds for reserves, and we get constantly funding. And we talked about this earlier, Ben. If you can afford one, you can afford more than one. So we can have the ability to do like 2 packs, 3 packs, 4 packs all at the same time. Works beautifully because it's just as easy to underwrite and fund 1 as it is 4. And by all means, please use a good 1031 exchange company. I would say for the most part, the ones that were bad before the '08 bust have left the playing field, and the ones that survived that are still here are pretty good for the most part. I can't begin to tell you how many times I've gotten real ornery with the exchangers not being able to send the funds over. Sometimes I see that happen. So always get with a credible firm. I believe Real Wealth Network supports a couple different firms. Ask Ben or your agent.
Yeah, we have on our website, if you log into realwealthnetwork.com, it will take you to our portal, and over on the left under resources, there are exchange companies. We've got 2 of them listed that our members have had real good luck with over the years.
And I wouldn't wait too much longer. If you're going to do an exchange, go ahead and get that property over, put the sale sign in there now. Let's get it doing. We lightly touched on this, and just to repeat, Fannie Mae will not allow for entity vesting. I have to obviously go on and off the record here. As a lender, I can tell you, no, you cannot. We'll provide you with a loan. We'll put it in your name, and then if you want to take it and put it into an LLC post-close, inside the promissory note, there's a clause in there called due on sale. Due on sale means if you change the titlement of any kind from what it originally was into anything other than your individual name, the servicer has the right and the ability to call that note due. Now, if I had $1 for every time I had this conversation, I'd have a lot of money. What I personally do, and 99% of my clients do, this is not advice by any means, is once my loan closes, I'll usually wait about 3 or 4 months for the loan itself to get seasoned with the servicer, get it set up, wait for the dust to clear, and then get in touch with your attorney or an escrow officer, send your deed of trust over there or to whoever, and have them do a warranty deed to transfer it over. Once again, this is not advice. This is what I personally do. So you have to ask yourself, has any of your notes ever been called? No. I've been doing this for 20 years, working with real estate agents and working with investors that are doing this exact same exercise. I've never got one phone call over the years stating that the note was called due. I even looked on a collaborative website recently. It's called Bigger Pockets. Maybe some of you are on there. And there was a blog from a Chase Manhattan servicer. I probably shouldn't say Chase, but the servicing manager of one of the bigger banks. And he says he sees this kind of activity going on all the time. He says they've never called a note due. You stop making payment on the note, they'll call it due. So keep in mind, you can still achieve your goal and set up asset protection, but you have to do it the right way. And a lot of people insist on having it funded inside up front. And if you do that, then you'd have to go with an alternate source, typically a non-recourse lender, which actually forces you to put it into an entity. Okay?
And one real quick thing, anybody who has questions, please go ahead and type them into your GoToWebinar control panel. I forgot to mention that at the top, and we will get to as many of them as we can towards the end.
Now, just the available programs. We can go up to actually 10 loans at 20% down, but their credit score changes. So basically on the first line there, you'll see 20% down for single family residents and 25 for the 2 to 4 units. The type of products that are still available: 30, 20, 15, and 10-year fixed rate loans. And we do have some ARM products that are still available. Quite frankly, I haven't sold an ARM product in years because the 30-year fixed rate is still very strong, even though the rates have come up a bit. If you talk to one of the seasoned investors I've been working with for years, they'll all say, anything below 7% on an investor rate is still a good rate. And that's still true today, but we just all been spoiled. That's our problem.
Yep.
So on the minimum credit score, we can go down to 620. A lot of the lenders will stop at 640, 660, 680, but we'll go straight down to 640. And what it tells you is that we're going straight up Fannie Mae guidelines. We do not have any overlays. An overlay is something that a lending institution will create and put on top of the guidelines that exist for Fannie Mae, because that establishes their flavor for risk. Okay, if I'm going to do this, I want something extra to make me feel better. Okay, we have zero overlays, so we actually can go down to the 720. And as we talked about in a couple of previous slides, once we get all your information, we put it into the system, we upload that information to the Fannie Mae underwriting engine. It takes moments to get an answer, and then once we get an answer, it's going to see either approved or referred. And once it says approved, it'll say, okay, we like this individual, make sure we have the necessary documentation, your tax returns, bank statements, and so forth. But I've seen the ratios get approved all the way up to 50. A lot of lenders will stop at 45 because that's their flavor for risk. As long as the underwriting engine supports it, then we're good to go. Same thing here. Only thing's different is the fourth bullet. Once you get up to your 6 loan, you're now starting for your 7 to 10. That it does require a 720 credit score. That is a hard stop. Now, I'll give you a good example of what sometimes credit can sometimes come back and haunt you. Had a guy that went out and purchased 5 properties, say in April, and came back and say June he wanted to purchase a couple more properties. Well, sometimes the way credit works, and I'm not a credit expert by any means, but credit looks at the balances in your accounts and measured against the limit on that account. As an example, you open up a credit card and they say, okay, we'll give you $5,000 balance. You go out and charge $4,999. Well, that pushes that balance up to the ceiling. The credit bureaus view that negatively, especially in the first days or the first several months of having that new liability on your credit report. Well, if you think about the same thing with loans, I'm going to give you 5 $100,000 loans. Well, the credit ceiling shows 100. Your balance is $9,000 or almost close to $100,000. The same principle applies. Well, what happened is his credit score got knocked from a 760 down to like a 719 or 20 or some, or 7. It was close to 700. Well, I couldn't give him the 7 to 10 loans until he got his credit scores repaired. Okay. Now, there is a thing that we do as a lender is if we run into that situation, we have an instrument called the rapid rescore. What we do is we go in and we analyze your credit, and we'll say, what is it going to take? I've got a 710, but I need 10 points to get to 720. We'll run this this tool. It'll analyze your credit, and it'll come back with an answer. Well, it says if you pay off this credit card, it'll go up 15 points. We have that happen quite often. I'd say probably 95% of the time it works, but I just want to make sure you're prepared for these type of realities. It does happen. Okay. Now, in the world of millennials, which it seems to be what we've been playing in a lot, and I refer to a lot of the folks out in Silicon Valley, they act the same way. I've been dealing with them for years, is they love technology, okay? And we want to be on the leading edge of technology. We want to make your life simple. And so the application process, we think, is relatively simple. What we do is when I talk to you over the phone or via email, I'll send you a link to the application page. You have the ability to download the application onto your cell phone or any type of portable device, as well as your computer. Once you do that, you make the application, takes 10 or 15 minutes. And then once the application is received, it'll create your own little dashboard, okay? It'll also, as you see on the right, and this happens to be a computer here, you'll see the dashboard. It'll show myself as a loan officer, and then it'll show the affiliate that you're working with, whichever turnkey provider in whichever market, their pitch will show up as well. The benefit is if you want to get in touch with them, you can click that if you want to go that route, but at least shows the continuity in the partnership of the transaction. But it also allows the affiliate to make sure they understand where we are in the process, okay? That first screen on the left, there's several different ways to view this. The borrower has a certain view, I have a certain view, and the affiliate has a certain view. This happens to be the affiliate view here, where they can actually go in and click the share app, and once they do that, they type in your phone number, goes right to your cell phone, as you can see on the right hand, onto the screen there to the right. All you got to do is press that button, takes you right into the application. You download it, do the very same process of doing the application. In addition to that, this little thing, on the first cell phone on the left, the affiliate, it also shows their search page, shows information about them. It's pretty user-friendly, very, very intuitive, and the affiliates love it because they can track everything in real time. But if you go to that third screen, once you've made the application, it'll prompt you to go to the dashboard. It'll say, okay, here are the documents that are needed. Once you upload them, it'll show that's been uploaded. As an example here, the driver's license. It's been uploaded. Thank you. We're waiting on the W-2s and the bank statements now. You can view that on your portable device, whether it be the cell phone, iPad, and also on the regular computer. You have your own dashboard. And then, of course, it has some additional tools if you want to take advantage of that. On the far right, you can play with the calculator, determine your principal and interest based upon the interest rate and the balance and so forth. So it's got a lot of built-in bells and whistles. But the affiliates love it. The millennials love it because they like to do everything over the phone. They don't like to talk on the phone for some crazy reason, but they love doing this. Mm-hmm. Now, let's say that we were clear to close. The borrower has signed their documents. The notary showed up and they signed the documents off. They went, and when there was one condition of the loan that says we need your most recent pay stub that comes in today, we need a copy of that. Well, the guy's already signed. He forgot about that condition. I give him a call and say, hey, we still need that pay stub. Oh, well, I've got it here. I'm at lunch, but I've got it in my hand. Can I just take a snapshot of it? Yes, you can. So you can take a snapshot of it from your phone. It has a way to crop it, as you can see on the screen to the left. And once you get it in line, then you hit that button, upload it, and all good. So we have that extra little built-in for people that love to take snapshots of their documents, because a lot of times they don't have scanners. And everything is very, very secure. Just to let you know, we have high protocols and everything that we do, so everything is very, very secure. The phone itself will give you milestone events. Okay, we went into processing. It's back from underwriting. Your appraisal's ordered. Not only will you get an email showing that, but you'll also get text showing that. And then, of course, if you want to log into the application, you'll see in real time all the little green lights that are on showing these have been accomplished. We're just waiting for clear to close. This happens to be one of the emails that will actually come to you as well. We got one for the processing piece like we talked about. Appraisal's been ordered. Underwriting submitted. We got the underwriting back with conditions. And then when we go clear to close, we'll send that off to you as well. And then if any post-close thank yous and surveys will come thereafter. The email will look very similar to this. Had a little video that you can watch, but also it'll give you the affiliate's name down there on the bottom, showing once again the partnership of the transaction. And I think that's it. Ben mentioned earlier that I wrote a book, and it's not that I really like writing books by any means, but over the course of 20 years working with investors, they all ask the same questions, so I figured I'd just put it into a guide of sort. It's free for you if you need it. Just ask me or go to my website, and it's a nice little read. It not only can help you today in your initial stages, but even down the road, talking about 1031 exchanges, pretty much everything we talked about here at our webinar, and then some. So if you need that, it's free for you.
Good deal. And you know, at the very beginning of this, and just a quick reminder to anybody, questions, go ahead and type them in. We will address them if any come in. Right at the beginning, you had the map of the country come up, and you went past it really quickly. But you're based in Dallas somewhere, right?
That is correct.
Okay, gotcha. And it really doesn't matter where people are based, but it's just kind of nice to know, who you're dealing with and where they're calling you from, so you don't call them at 6 in the morning, not realizing that they're in a different time zone.
Well, Ben, you actually know this as well,
Mm-hmm.
but I usually try to remind all my clients, even though I work in all these markets, I'll actually get on a plane and go vet them as well. For two reasons. I want to always obviously peek under the hood, look at their product, but I'm also shopping myself. So I do understand how they work and how they go to market, their products and so forth. So, all those markets that we looked at, I pretty much have been there.
Gotcha. Well, that definitely helps. And then people can ask you, like, what do you think of this market or that market? And you can always just throw in your 2 cents, just like we throw in our 2 cents. It's just really nice dealing with somebody who is a fellow investor as well. It's kind of like picking a CPA that's real good about tax code, but they don't own any property, so they're kind of clueless when it comes to 1031s or opportunity zones or whatnot. It's like, doesn't exactly fill you with confidence, whereas the opposite is when you're dealing with people that are investors. It makes a huge difference.
Yes, I'm drinking your Kool-Aid.
Yep. Good deal. All right, let's see. We got one question. Now, you addressed one of these, but I'm just going to read the question verbatim. Will you address credit lines for down payments, which you kind of already did? Also, will you address credit lines for repairs, bridge loans, et cetera, during the webinar? Now, I think you don't do bridge loans, but go ahead and just answer that guy's question if you don't mind.
Yeah, bridge loans is something that used to be pretty popular. It's a cross. You're taking equity from one entity over to the other. You're kind of borrowing from one property to the next. I don't even know if they're even still available anymore. There may be some independent banks that are willing to do that. We are a Fannie Mae Freddie Mac lender. We do not support rehabbing loans. We're just the all in. Once it's done and has a tenant in it, it's completed. That's the type of loans we do. If you're willing to buy a property that may be off the grid and you found it through MLS and it's distressed, it won't pass the appraisal, or the lender, a Fannie Mae lender, won't approve it, and it needs some help to take it from the distressed into completely rehabbed, then you might want to consider some hard money. And I believe, Ben, I'm not sure if you support hard money lenders on your grid or not, but there's some out there that can help you with that. There's even some non-recourse lenders, I think, that you do support that has some rehab programs as well. But I'm straight Fannie Mae. It's a finished product. I'm going to lend on a finished product.
And all of our affiliates, with one exception, Pittsburgh, all of our affiliates, you're not going to need those other type of loans because they've already been rehabbed. You're not going to need to borrow funds for rehabbing because the affiliate, the property provider that we've looked at and done our due diligence on, they've already done all the rehab. So you're buying a completed product. So you don't necessarily need to deal with that. And I remember you told me a couple of years ago about the HELOC thing, which really surprised me in a pleasant way. I was thinking that the banks would, or lenders would, look askance if you were trying to use a borrowed funds to come up with a down payment. But you explained that, well, it's secured funds. It's a HELOC is against your primary residence, or in some cases against an investment property, but it's secured. It's not like you're taking a loan off on your 19% credit card to come up with the down.
Yeah, it's against your equity, against those dollars in equity that are yours is what it's against. And that's how they look at it. Yeah, the HELOCs are great. I highly recommend those.
Yep. And to your question, I believe there are banks out there that, and I don't know who they are either. Years ago, I got a HELOC on an investment property that I owned in Tempe, Arizona. I went to Chase, they refused, they wouldn't do it. And then I went across the street to Wells Fargo and they gave me a $50,000 HELOC against this property. So that was, 2000, I don't know, 7 years ago. I don't know if they still do it, but I will look into it and see if we can find out, because it sure would be nice to get some HELOCs against investment properties.
Oh, it'd be great. I mean, they were readily available before the 2008 bust. And what's interesting, I know a lot of guys have some huge HELOCs in California. And of course, there was one of the ones that really got beat up on the depreciations. And there was a lot of firms that just pulled the HELOC, says, we don't want it anymore. We're taking it away from you. And I'm sure
Right.
the majority of those were on the investment properties. But if you have one now on an investment property, you want to keep it, don't get rid of that HELOC.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what happened to me. I just got this evil letter one day. Sorry.
Yeah,
Good
it's
thing you
crazy.
weren't utilizing that money because you no longer have it to utilize.
Yeah,
Sorry, pal.
keep some kind of balance on it, whatever you got to do.
Right, exactly. All righty. Let's see, what else? Okay, you mentioned earlier that Fannie Freddie guidelines prohibit you, or not just you, anybody, from loaning to an LLC, that it has to be in your name or the name of a family trust. So now let's talk about that for a second. So say somebody has a living trust. It's revocable living trust, and it's, for them and their wife and their kid or whatever. It's a family trust, but everyone calls it a living trust. Is that considered the
Yes, that's
same as if?
fine. Yeah, we'll
Okay.
do that. Only thing we ask is that you provide us the complete trust documents. Sometimes it could be, 75, 100 pages, and people just say, well, let me just give you the first 2 pages. And we have to see it all because our attorneys do have to go through, and we do review the entire trust to make sure it's written in accordance to Fannie Mae, because there's sometimes that attorneys can write something that Fannie Mae doesn't like. I can go into several details, but I'd say 99% of the time, if it's revocable family trust and the beneficiaries are human beings, then we'll get it done. I have a lot of people come to me a lot of times. It says, well, I have a land trust that I want to use. Well, most of the time, land trust has a beneficiary of being an LLC. Well, here we are back to the LLC scenario. So the land trusts are not acceptable, only family living trust.
Got it. So now let's just use a hypothetical. Say Bob and Sue are, married couple. The living trust is whatever. I'm using layman terms here. Written with both of them and their child or whatever, but it's mainly Bob and Sue. If one wants to finance a investment property and title it in the name of the living trust, is that going to, in addition to having to provide you with the entire living trust document, is it essentially as if both Bob and Sue individually are applying for it? So therefore, you'll have to get all their individual information as well?
Good question. No, we can do it strictly in just Bob's name. The only thing is, being that Sue is a part of the trust, she'll just have to sign one of the documents at closing. Okay. But as
Okay.
far as all the loan documents, Bob can do the whole thing.
Okay. So like a lot of times I'll talk to people who, for example, they know about the 10 Fannie Freddie limit. So Bob's going to get 10, and then they're going to put Sue's name on 10, and they can both qualify individually. They don't need each other's income to qualify. They can both stand on their own and qualify. So in the case of using my example, Bob would fund 123 Main Street in the name of the living trust, and it would all go on Bob, and that would count against Bob as one of his 10 golden tickets, but it would not count against Sue. Correct?
I just had a long conversation with my underwriting manager, knowing what was going to have this webinar, because that and the LLC scenarios, once you post close, put it in LLC, the LLC may not be a single member, it may be a joint member having the wife in it. Does that take away from the wife again? What I was explained to me is that if it shows up, let me try this again. What we typically look at is your credit report. Okay, that's the first and foremost. How many loans does the individual have? And then we require that you fill out the real estate owned section and be as truthful as possible. Then we match up the liabilities with the properties, what's got a loan on it, what's free and clear. And then we'll also run a thing called a fraud guard, which the underwriter will take a look at it. And if there's a property on there that's not on the REO section or in your credit report, they may ask about that. And I know I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but some lenders, some underwriters will take a look at the fact that Bob did the loan, Sue or Mary was in the trust, and the trust owns the property 50-50, whatever case may be. Yes, that actually will take away from Mary's ability to do the ninth loan or 10th loan, because she has ownership, or she's in that trust. And sometimes it applies the very much the same way on the LLC side. And I wanted to get some clarity on that, Ben, and I would love to circle back with you after the webinar to give you a little bit more up-to-date information, because it's almost case by case.
Right. It's okay. Yeah. I mean, that would be, I love the idea of, if people don't want to do LLCs for whatever reason, and they just want to, you know, but they don't want to have stuff in their personal name. And so they've got a living trust they set up years ago. It's still active. It's valid. And they want to put the properties in that name. Great. But if they're in a situation where Bob wants to get 10, Sue became Sally suddenly. Sally wants to get 10, then we don't want it to count against both of them. So yeah, that would be a crucial thing to find out. And as usual, it sounds like it's a little bit of a gray area, and it depends on.
It really is, because when we close the loan, when we fund it, we deliver these out into the Fannie Mae community. Investors are buying these pools of loans, and they're going through and they're auditing the way it was underwritten. And some may have mechanisms when they may pull their own fraud guard. Another one called a MERS report. There's several reports they can pull over and beyond what a credit report would show, and they may pick up on something that we missed. You know, well, this guy's got a property over here in the LLC. Well, it was never disclosed. It was never come on his credit report. Do we count it against him? Do we not? Some lenders will say yes, we do. Some won't. So it is really a gray area these days, and that's kind of a good and bad thing. The good thing is it kind of loosened up a bit, but the bad thing is hard to interpret and advise on the front end, not knowing if we're going to get busted or not. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Sure does make sense. I mean, it's kind of one of those things that, you know, I've also had people tell me, like, hey, I've got three properties I own within my self-directed IRA, and they're in an LLC. And the lender says that, oh, yeah, those count, but they've not pointed them out to the lender, and they've never shown up. So it's kind of like they fly under the radar sometimes.
Now you're getting into another layer of gray, and you're absolutely right. In my opinion, it's inside the IRA. The IRA is not being reported on your taxes, okay? It's not on your tax return. So it's not like it's out of sight, out of mind. Do you individually own that property? No, your IRA does. And typically IRA loan or lenders will require you to set that up in an LLC. Well, now the LLC owns the entity, okay? So it gets a little convoluted, and once again, it's up to interpretation.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
So one of the things that husbands and wives will do, let's just take the trust and the LLC and everything else out of place, and you know, the husband says, okay, my wife's a housewife, takes care of the kids. I'm gonna go ahead and do the loan, just take care of it all. At the end, we'll just go ahead and put her in title because she's my wife. Well, I get that, okay? I have a wife too, but one of the things in most states, we're all in community states, it's still half. You know, I'm not an attorney, so I can't make this recommendation, but that's something of consideration. A lot of people will have their wives put on there just as a courtesy to the wife and make them all feel better, but it may come back to them when we're starting to add up the number of again.
Gotcha. Okay, so now I'm going to start taking some of these questions here. And, you know, if you don't know, just say you don't know. It's okay. And let's see. Okay, here's a question, but it's not really a complete question, so let's try to figure it out together. Assuming mortgages on owner-occupied properties are included in the Fannie Mae reserve requirements, but please confirm.
No, we do not take your primary residence into the reserve requirements.
Okay, gotcha. Perfect. Yeah, can't do that. Can you refi on a 1031 purchase to pull out cash after closing?
Yes. The way that that's called, two different ways. If the 1031 buys it for cash or puts leverage on it, let's just go with the cash route. And let's just say we're calling this a non-season cash out. If the 1031 buys it for $100,000, and we come back and say, okay, we'll go ahead and do day two, make a loan application, and to take all that money out. And as far as, you know, tax implications or anything like that, you may have to get with your CPA. But as far as a lender's concerned, you own the property. We see that it clearly was bought, you know, with the 1031 exchanges or exchange money. That's your money. We will give you 75% of the value of that property on the appraised value. Okay, so we will do that.
Okay, gotcha. All right. If I use a HELOC for my 20% down payment, and the other 80% from a regular property loan, is it a good idea to do it this way? Is it possible to find properties with positive cash flow with this strategy? Okay, well, let me give you your vocal cords a little bit of a rest. And yes, it absolutely is, but obviously you have to talk to your bank, get the HELOC set up first, and then you'll be able to either ask them or just figure out, okay, if I borrow, say I have a $100,000 HELOC, a line with this bank. If I'm going to buy this $100,000 property over here, I'll get a loan for $80,000, a normal Fannie Freddie loan through Graham and Highlands, but I'll need to take $20,000 on my HELOC. So look at the pro forma from that house. Say you're buying a house in, I don't know, Cleveland. There's the pro forma, and it says that property will have, assuming you put $20,000 down out of your own pocket, here's what the positive cash flow is after all expenses. And the positive cash flow is, I don't know, $340. But the bank tells you that if you borrow $20,000 on your HELOC, oh, that'll cost you $120. Well, then yes, you still are going to have positive cash flow, $200 left over. So yes, it is possible, but you obviously have to be a little more careful about it, because you don't want to have a situation where, yeah, if you came up with 20% out of your own pocket, it's positive. Now that you've got this second loan or second payment to the HELOC, you don't want to be in a negative situation. So, but yes, I'm pretty sure you can do that based on the numbers and what I know.
Yes, and the good thing about the HELOCs in the first, like I'm doing one now. They asked me today, do I want to do a 5-year pay or a 10-year pay, which means I can do interest only during that 5 years, or I can extend it to 10 years. Well, of course, I took the 10 years because I want to keep that interest only option available as long as I can. And so typically the interest only payments are a lot less than they would just principal and interest for a rate straight loan. So that's going to help you, from a dollars and cents cash flow. I like the HELOC there to do exactly what you just described, but a lot of times I like to pay it back off and go do it again, just so I can have that line open. A lot of people say, I'm going to get, $200,000 HELOC on my house in California. I'm going to spend all $200,000. I'm going to invest in property. Sure, but you have to take those numbers into account as well, just like you described.
Yep. Don't get into trouble. Don't over leverage. Don't. Sometimes the only time I ever see people get into trouble is if they just go a little too fast and paint themselves into a corner. Okay, so let's see. And we're going to have to. We've got a lot of questions here. We're running right about the hour mark, so that's okay. If you have to leave because lunch hour's over, got to go, that is fine. But we've got a lot of people interested here, so I'm just going to kind of keep going if that's okay with you, Graham.
Yeah, sure.
All right, this one I can answer. Does 1031 tax exchange work on primary residence? What is the time limit between sale and next purchase? No, 1031 is a tax code that is only for investment property. Has nothing to do with your primary residence. You cannot use a 1031 for that. That's a different benefit. Live two out of the past 5 years in your primary residence, then you can get that one-time tax benefit, but that's a whole different subject. So 1031s are just for investment properties. All right, let's see. Okay, this will be a quick one. Are you going to cover lending for foreign nationals, i.e. Canadian?
Unfortunately, we tried to do that. Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac does not support that type of equation. These are considered alternate A lenders, and there are alternate A lenders out there doing foreign nationals. And I can just kind of briefly tell you that the terms are not as good as Fannie Freddie. Typically, it's a 50% loan to value, a much higher rate, and you really have to get with a lender that understands foreign nationals, because from one country to the next, just the interpretation alone, if you're not aware of it, it could take you forever. So I attempted to do it several years back, and it just got impossible. And so unfortunately, I don't do it. I would even love to recommend a good foreign national, but I don't. If you are a U.S. citizen, because we work with guys all over the world, if you're a U.S. citizen, green card, or visa holder, then we can do a loan for you, Fannie Freddie. So there's a lot of guys that are that I know that live abroad that are U.S. citizens. I know a lot of guys that are here on a work visa that have been working for some tech company for the last 10 years. They're good to go, green cards, so forth and so on. We treat them all the same.
Got it. How about investors that have more than 10 financed properties? Can Mr. Graham help us? Answer no, right?
I'm going to refer to one of Ben's companies that's on his website.
Yep.
I personally use Lima One. They have pretty good rates and terms, and I'm fannied out myself, so I'm having to deal with that. One of the things I will say is you can't use them in conjunction with your HELOC because they don't like to do that with the HELOCs.
Right. Okay. Let's see. I've taken one loan, wait for some duration for the next loan, or can I apply immediately?
Say that one more time. You broke up, Ben.
Sure. If I have taken out one loan today, do I need to wait for some duration for the next loan, or can I apply immediately?
Well, if you did the loan with me, you don't have to do anything. You just go find me a contract. We'll do one day too. So we're not going to slow you down by any means. As long as your income still supports it and you have the money for down payment, closing costs, we'll just keep them coming.
Mm-hmm. Okay, since we're talking number of loans, I assume a primary residence owned under husband and wife will count as one loan each with only room for 18 investment properties, 9 husband, 9 wife. I would say that's correct. Correct?
Correct.
All right, perfect. How difficult is it for someone who is self-employed to get a loan for an investment property?
Boy, if I had a dollar for every time I asked that, I'd have money too. You kind of know how you do your taxes, okay? If you whittle them down to the nub, or you're in the red, you pretty much have the answer right there. But there's a lot of times, and my staff, my underwriters and my processors and assistants are wizards when it comes to self-employed. I mean, they can pull out whatever. It's like milking a turnip. If there's available income, we'll find it. If we can't do it, typically it can't be done. So the answer is it's case by case. And a lot of times people say, well, I'm a little reluctant to get my credit pulled unless I know. Well, a lot of times I'll just have you send me over the tax returns. Let me take a look at it. If it looks like it's in line, let's do it. If it's just completely bloody, I'm gonna tell you no. It's that simple.
Right. Perfect. All righty. I can answer this one. Most people that invest out of state, are they setting up their LLCs in the state they invest in? And as I understand it, and what I've been told numerous times, yes, you need the LLC to be either set up in the state, the property that you're covering in, or you authorize that LLC to do business in that state. So say you have Nevada LLC, but the property you want to put in that LLC is in Maryland. You just have to go to Maryland and say, hey, I want to register this for an LLC. It's an extra step. It makes more sense to just put the LLC in Maryland to begin with. All righty.
And I'm going to kind of step in on that. And I've been preaching that one for years, been up until last year. Mm-hmm. You can't have somebody do your LLCs for whatever states you are going to do business in. Let's say if I'm in Dallas, I have an attorney set up for my one's in Alabama, one's for Ohio, one's for Florida, which I just got through going through and doing that. But you do have to identify, as you say, you have to register in that state, and you also have to have an individual in that state that represents you. Typically, what I do is just have the property manager be that person representing you.
Mm-hmm. So have the property manager be the statutory or registered agent. Correct.
Yeah, and please get with your accountant, CPA, or attorney on this.
Yep, absolutely. It's one of those areas. All right. Let's see what else. There's so many questions here. Who services the loan after closing?
Probably 40 to 45% of all of our conventional loans are serviced by us, and the rest are sold out to aggregators. We have a select probably 3 that we utilize, and we vetted them all. We can send them to 20 different aggregators of servicers, but there's the turnkey property loans are a very narrow delivery path for originators like us. It's hard to explain. We're limited on time. I'm not going to get into that. But all the services that we go to are very, very good. Whether your loan will be serviced by Highlands or not, it's really not my decision. It's our back-end secondary department that will determine that. Either way, our servicing on all the entities have been very, very good.
Got it.
And it's not to the big boys, by the way.
Right. Yeah, of course. Okay, got a lot of questions about qualifications that are all fairly general, so I'm just going to kind of aggregate them into one question. Do I have to have a W-2 job to get a Fannie Freddie backed 30-year fixed loan? And you already answered that. No, you don't, but you have to fit the guidelines of debt to income, right?
Right.
I mean,
it's all numbers. It's pure and simple. Whether you're a 1099 sole proprietor, you set up your own LLC, you pay yourself a salary, it's all numbers. Because whatever entity you set up, your corporation or whatever, it funnels into your 1040 tax returns. Your 1040 tax returns is your true total tell of your personal income. If there's enough numbers on that report to support the income, then we're fine, whether it be a W-2 or coming through Schedule E, C, B, wherever the schedule of income coming in, it funnels into a bottom line number. That's what we're going to use.
1040, page 1. All right. Let's see. What is your opinion of using a reverse mortgage on the primary residence to provide funds for investing with no current payments?
I'm not a true believer in the reverse mortgages. I've just seen a lot of horror stories come back around. Like you said a minute ago, sometimes people can over leverage themselves. I'm just not a supporter of that. I would say get with a financial planner on that one.
Yeah, it's a little could be a little sketchy.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. Oh boy. Okay, I'm just going to ask this one. I own multiple properties cash. Can I somehow strip out the equity from my cash holdings and borrow against that without coming up with more cash for my down payment?
Once again, whatever equity you have in these properties, it's your money. If you want to cash out those properties, absolutely, we'll do it for you all day, and it's still your money.
Right.
So, yeah.
In other words, if you own 5 properties and they're worth $100,000 each, you can pick property number 1 and property number 2, go to you, finance, pull 75% of that money out. So now you've got 75,000 times 2, you've got 150,000 cash. You can do whatever you want with it. You can buy a boat with it. You can spread it across the parking lot of your nearby grocery store, or you could buy income properties.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm gonna send you back to Ben's area for that. Yeah, you definitely want to go back to him and buy more investment properties. Don't do the boat. That's not wise.
Yeah, or certainly don't do the spreading around on the parking lot. I don't know where I came up with that. Okay, let's see. I think that is about it. Let me see if I skipped any of these questions over. Unless my chat box here is overflowing. But I think that about covers it. So Graham, good job. Thank you so much. We will archive this webinar, and it will be on our website. It'll take probably 24, 48 hours to just kind of render it and archive it and then put it on there. So please, if you want to hear it again, you'll be able to. You just won't be able to for about another 24 hours. February 9th, we've got the property showcase coming up, and then we've got our thing happening in March. Please register for it. The income property showcase is almost filled up, but there's a few more slots available. And the only tough thing is going to be getting a room, but there are slots at the Hyatt. And there's a couple other hotels downtown as well. So Graham, good job.
Thanks, guys. I enjoyed it. And if you guys do show up in Florida next week, I will be there, and you're welcome to come ask me anything you want.
Perfect. We will see you then. Thanks, everybody. We'll do it again next week, same time, same bat channel. Once again, this is Real Wealth Network's weekly webinar. Thanks so much for joining us. Sorry we ran a little bit over, but I think it was worth it. Have a good one. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye, everybody.